Hi everyone and welcome to this week's episode of 427 Motorsports from the cold, stormy and messy garage. This week we're talking about something that might be of some use to you guys doing your TDI conversions, or maybe people who just want to learn a little bit more about how the car works. So if your car ain't starting in the morning, or maybe you're doing a TDI conversion of your own, here's something you might not have thought about there and then: immobilizers. As well as this, we have some very exciting news coming up, which some of you who follow us on the social media channels may already know, but for the rest of you, you might not. But stick around to find out. First of all, the big news. You may have seen on my Instagram if you follow me, but believe it or not, 427 Motorsports are going to America. Yup, I'm flying over to Miami next week and I'm meeting up with Connor, who's over there for work at the minute, and we're gonna make some content over there of the completely different car scene from what we have over here. And really it's going to be an Irish person's take on the American car scene, which I think, as somebody who has been in love with American cars since I was about that high, I think it'll be a wake-up call more than anything. But I'm really excited to see how it goes, and we have a lot of content due to be filmed while I'm over there. Now, just as a heads up, this does mean there's going to be a couple weeks without any videos just while we get everything sorted, but it's going to be worth the wait. So we'll be vlogging and videoing the whole thing. We'll be going to different museums and interviewing some people, and it's really gonna be a complete change from what you're used to on the channel, but I think it'll really be a cool thing. And I've always wanted to go to America. I've never went further than some of Europe, so this will be completely different for me, and I really can't wait. So stay tuned to our channel, and if you haven't already, check me out on Instagram at tommo.pattison and Connor on Instagram at Hughes Corporation to stay up to date with everything that's going on, and then the videos will come to the channel shortly after. But anyway, on to this week's episode. So our story regarding immobilizers actually begins about just over a month ago, really, when we decided to go to a local car show, well, sort of local, called the Dundalk Cars and Coffee. I think it's called the Northeast Cars and Coffee, or Northwest Cars and Coffee. I'm not sure. Anyway, there's cars, there's coffee, and there was supposed to be us. There was us, but not the way you expect. After meeting up at about 7 o'clock in the morning with Connor and Ryan in the Peugeot 309 and the Mercedes 190 and our 427 Motorsports van, we set off to Dundalk, very excited to see what the car show had to offer. Stopping into an Apple Green in Dundalk, as you must do to get a coffee, to go to Cars and Coffee, I mean, it's literally in the name. We pulled in to get a nice cup of tea and coffee and hit the road. But when I went back to the car, I wasn't greeted with the usual turnkey start, let's go. It was much worse than that.
Big sprongy boy. Oh wow, it comes with a non-show sticker. Alright. I'm trying to put it around the tow bar, but can't even.
Oh, it won't go back on itself? That's weird.
I don't know how good that towing eye is, but you're here. I don't know how good my towing eye is either.
Good luck.
I'll put more across the earth in the line.
Unfortunately, what wound up happening then was the most embarrassing scene of a Mark II Golf being towed by a Peugeot 309 to a car show full of Lamborghinis, a Ferrari, Porsches. I think we actually got more attention than the Ferraris and the Porsches because we were being towed into the show, but we were not gonna not go. Tow rope or no, we were gonna make it. So we got it home and I tore into the diagnosis. But what was wrong with it was the immobilizer. First things first, what's an immobilizer? Well, an immobilizer is exactly as it sounds. It immobilizes your car. I don't know if you remember the old ads back in the day of the like anti-piracy ones you used to get at the start of DVDs. And there's a shot of a guy breaking into a Mercedes, I want to say it's an S-Class, I think it's a 560 SEL. Maybe it's not, it might be a W126 or W16. I'm not sure, it'll be over the top of me talking right now with the text at the bottom telling you what it actually is. But anyway, it says in big letters on top, you wouldn't steal a car. These days, however, it's kind of more of a, you'll struggle to steal a car, because of things called immobilizers. Immobilizers really came to fame in the 90s after the hell that was the 1980s, where every hot hatch and every fast car got stolen on a nightly basis to go and get wrecked down at the local car park. Manufacturers decided there had to be a way to make things a little bit harder for people to steal their cars. Because as you've seen in all of the TV shows on it in Grand Theft Auto 4, break the window, get in, unhook the dash at the bottom, join a couple wires, vroom vroom, car starts. Great. They also brought in the steering lock. I'm not sure when they brought that in, but that meant if the key wasn't in, the steering wouldn't turn, which with a bit of ignorance, realistically, you can brake anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So manufacturers decided they need a more foolproof approach. Now, for the sake of your own information, I will be dumbing this down a lot to try and make it more accessible to everybody, but also to keep it relevant to the TDI conversion that we'll be talking about. So, how do immobilizers work? Well, it's kind of simple and I'll break it down. First of all, it begins with the thing in your pocket, the key. Now this is the key to the Mark III Golf. Within this key, and this is still true today, although it's a bit more advanced these days, they have batteries and things like that. Within this key is a chip, and this code is picked up by your transponder. We don't need to get into all the technical terms, but basically, key goes into ignition, which is surrounded by this transponder. You turn the key, and this sends this signal all the way down this cable to your immobilizer box. Now this, I haven't taken this apart. I don't plan to because I don't want to have something go wrong. But basically the way that this works is this takes the signal from the key and converts it into a signal that the car's brain can understand. Ta-da! So, plug goes into box, box goes to brain, brain understands code from the key, and the code from the key is read and is checked against a code within the brain. I know it's getting complicated, just bear with me. Think of it as like Bluetooth on your mobile phone. When you go to pair with your new car, it says, does this code match what's on your screen? And if it does, press yes. And it's the same basic formula within the immobilizer. Now, if it doesn't read the code, that is when you have problems. When it doesn't read the code, the brain, which is the brain of the operation, this tells the diesel pump whether or not to send fuel. Now, if your brain isn't getting the code, the diesel pump won't send fuel to the injectors, which means then your car won't start. It'll turn over all day long, but it won't start. However, once this gets the code, it will allow the diesel pump to get fuel, it will send it to the injectors, and your vehicle will start. But without the key, none of this is possible, which makes it a lot harder to steal one of these. And the problem in my instance with the blue Golf was that the wiring going to this wasn't working properly. And realistically, I did the wiring on that when I was about 18 and really didn't know what I was doing. So I was able to cancel it out fairly quickly that the wiring was the issue. Luckily, there is something you could do about this if you wish. Let's pull Debbie in here to get a practical demonstration because it's hard to beat actually seeing it happen in front of you. So we've got Debbie now into the garage. I'm going to show you what we're talking about. Here we've got two brains. One has had the ECU immobilizer removed and rechipped and everything I explained earlier, and one is just the plain old brain. So I'll plug in the old brain to show you what she was doing. So plugging these in is pretty simple. All you have to do is throw the hoop around. All you have to do is get the wire, plug it into the vacuum. I think it's a vacuum or it's an intake or something like that. Either way, it takes a reading of air from here, which we went into in one of our previous TDI videos, which you can check out on our channel. But anyway, you plug that in, and then it's just a case of grabbing the other plug. And that is it. Now, obviously that's not where the brain stays all of the time, but for the purpose of the video and showing you quite easily, it'll stay there. So now we try and start the car. Now this shows you exactly what happened that fateful morning at Dundalk Apple Green when the car decided it had enough. So as you can see, she tries to start on the first turn and then cuts dead and just chugs. Now what's happening when that happens is, when you turn the key to try and start, the diesel comes up through these pipes and gets to the pump. However, this plug here is controlled by the brain. And right now, because the immobilizer isn't working, the brain is telling this little plug, don't let diesel come through. Which means the diesel isn't coming up to the injectors here and the car won't start. Simple as that, really. So if we swap the new ECU in, it'll start. Now, with our new ECU plugged in, I guarantee it fires right up. See what I mean? And it's as simple as that. Now, regarding TDI swaps, you can go about this in one of two ways. The first way is to keep things as they were. Now, if you're doing an engine swap from a Mark III Golf or a Mark IV Golf or even a modern Golf or anything, whatever you're doing it on, it doesn't matter. The best way to do it is to put everything from one car into your car as it was. So what you would do is you would take your transponder from the ignition and the box and all of the associated wiring that's going to the ECU, but this still needs to read the code from the key. So the way you can do it, on which I have done in my Mark II, the blue one, you can take your key, put it within the transponder, cable tie it around it so it will never move, and it will always read the code. The only problem with this is, if you have any problems with your wire or if something goes wrong with the key, your car won't start. And it's going to be a lot harder for you to try and find out what's wrong unless you know that your wiring skills aren't necessarily the best. Option number two, which is probably your safest bet and which I'm only after getting done, is to get your ECU demobilized. Now, in the case of a Mark III Golf, which is what I have done this on, an AHU or a 1Z, it involves a bit of soldering. Now, what happens is you take the ECU apart. There is a chip on the motherboard. I don't have any shots of this because I haven't done it and I can't do it, but sorry, but I can tell you what it's meant to be. What happens is you desolder the chip from the board that has the immobilizer built in. Then you replace it with another chip with no immobilizer on it, and then you reprogram the ECU and tell it it doesn't have an immobilizer anymore. And then it will always start, or well, it'll always get fuel, or if something else isn't wrong. And you can kind of cancel out this whole problem and not have to worry about it again. That's what I did with the blue Golf, and is probably the safest bet long term. Unless you can do this yourself, in which case you probably wouldn't be watching this video anyway because you already know what the crack is with immobilizers. Expect to pay around £100 to £120 to get this done. However, it is a one-time thing, and when it's done, it's done. One thing I do know is if you're going for a 1.8T conversion from the likes of a Mark IV Golf, it's actually possible to reprogram the ECU without removing it from the car. No soldering required, you can just plug it in and get it removed. This service is probably cheaper, however, I haven't had to do it yet, so I couldn't tell you. But in the case of a Mark III, desolder, reprogram, job done. So to recap simply on, in theory, what they do, key has chip with code, immobilizer box receives code from key, immobilizer box sends code to ECU, which has another code stored. ECU checks to see if that code matches with theirs, and if it does, car gets fuel, car starts. If ECU doesn't get the same code, the cutoff solenoid or whatever solenoid in the diesel pump will not open, you will not get fuel, and you will be stuck. The car will keep turning, but it will not start. So if you're having issues regarding a vehicle getting fuel up to the pump but not sending it to the injectors, maybe it's time to look at your ECU. So hopefully this has given you a bit of a beginner's guide into what immobilizers are and roughly how they work. And if your car doesn't start in the morning and it's getting all the usual things, maybe this is something you should check out. It's something that older mechanics, well, I'm not necessarily older, but I work on older stuff. It's something that we tend to kind of forget is the electronics behind all operations. So hopefully this will keep you that bit more informed and maybe give you an extra train of thought when you're trying to work on something. If this video helped, I'd really appreciate it, as everybody says on YouTube, if you could subscribe to our channel, and we don't really mind if you don't give us a thumbs up, but we would really appreciate it if you do tell your friends. It really means a lot. Thank you all so much to everybody who's subscribed. We still can't believe we've hit 1,000 subscribers. It just seems like madness to us. Next week, we're going to be back to our Fintail project for the road to Dubshed, and then after that, it's America. So yes, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week, and good luck.